Good evening, America. Happy Monday. Welcome to the latest edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from the nation's capital. A busy day, though not so much in Washington, D.C., rather overseas, where President Trump has kicked off an extraordinary foreign trip, visiting Japan earlier today and Malaysia over the weekend. But it all comes as a backdrop to the president's trade negotiations with Chinese leader Xi Jinping later this week. The Trump administration has announced a number of big developments on that front. First, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the United States and China have reached a substantial framework in trade talks already, further explaining that the president has given him maximum leverage around the rare earth mineral policy, threatening 100% tariffs if the Chinese end up implementing any kind of rare earth export controls on the United States. Secretary Bessent also revealed that the two countries have reached what he called a final deal on TikTok that would allow the social media giant to remain operational in the United States. That deal will also be made official after President Trump meets with Xi Jinping on Thursday. The deal sees U.S. investors owning 80% of the app's U.S. operations, with Chinese parent company ByteDance owning a 20% stake. The big question will be, who owns the algorithm? We should learn more about that over the next couple of days. We also have some big news coming from the FBI to get to. Dealing with the Bureau's policy of building alliances with local police departments, it's resulting in some major wins. The most recent was Operation Chalkline, which used 14 SWAT teams to penetrate street gangs that had been terrorizing the cities of Milwaukee and Racine in southeastern Wisconsin. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino praised it over the weekend. Officials said the raids around Milwaukee were the product of a years-long investigation that brought state and federal partners together. Pretty successful operation. And by the way, the gangs they took down had ties to international cartels. So they weren't just even terrorizing in Wisconsin. They were all over the world. That's just the latest example. The partnerships known as Homeland Security Task Forces that brought together FBI and HSI personnel, as well as task force officers from local, state, and federal partner agencies. The target, transnational organized crime activity. That's what they're bringing on. Things like drug trafficking and human trafficking. Big wins. Cities are a lot safer. There were 5 cities that had major raids last week where those task forces were fast at work. All right. Great time to bring in my amazing co-host, Amanda Head, for more headlines. Amanda, what do you got cooking?
Yes, indeed, John. I want to get out to that big mayoral race in New York City for just a minute, because it has obviously been dominating the national conversation lately, not necessarily because it deals with the future of America's biggest city. That, of course, is a huge consideration. But it also deals with the future of the Democrat Party. Which way should they go? Should they come closer to the center and moderate their positions like some perceive the 2024 results show? Or should they swing further to the left, like others argue the 2024 election shows? And it seems that we have our answer in the case of New York City Democrat mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. It's widely predicted that Mamdani is going to be the next mayor of New York City. And let's just say that some of his policy prescriptions aren't that of your mom and dad's Democrat Party. Here he was explaining at a rally that he held over the weekend.
We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, and use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line, and we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents.
Yeah, I mean, that all sounds great in theory, but who is going to pay for it all? As the great Iron Lady said, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. So will it be the white neighborhoods that Mamdani has said that he wants to tax more? Kind of seems like it. But this is who the Democrats have decided is going to be their standard bearer. Don't believe me? Well, here is Governor Kathy Hochul at that very same rally.
Elect Zohran, and we take back America. Thank you, Queens. Thank you, New York. I love you guys.
Elect Zohran and we take back America. I don't know, John, maybe that works in New York City where you say we're going to have higher taxes for white neighborhoods. But I know a lot of states in this country where they would say to them, don't try that around here.
Listen, what's going to happen is that people are going to change their residency. The billionaires will open up a place in Florida and only stay in New York 5 months a month. They won't pay their taxes. Yep. Middle class won't be able to afford it. They're going to leave, and you're going to have a ghost town that can't pay for anything in New York. That's the dynamic that all the economists I'm talking to are talking about. It's
Very different Democrat Party from when you started covering politics.
100% different. Yeah.
Shoot, it's a different Democrat Party
It
from
looks
when I
more
started
like it looks more like
politics.
Castro than it looks like America
Indeed.
of the 1990s. It's pretty remarkable. All right. Well, helping to make sense of all that we just talked about at the top of the show, joining us now, the great representative from the state of North Carolina, Congressman Mark Harris. Congressman, great to have you on the show.
Hey, John, it's great to be with you and Amanda today.
It is an honor to have you on. I want to talk about some of the things that the president has achieved on this trip already. Deals with Australia and Southeastern Asian nations to get us rare earths, putting us back on a better footing after years of China doing that. A framework of a trade and tariff deal that could be that obviously Wall Street liked a lot today. And then, of course, getting TikTok in American hands. China ran wild for 4 years under Joe Biden, but it feels like President Trump is starting to level the playing field. What are you seeing? What do you expect to come out of the meeting with President Xi later this week?
Well, John, one of the things that I'm seeing is that we need not be too quick to forget that Joe Biden and his leadership retreated from the world stage. And what I think you're seeing happening this week, and we've been seeing in these weeks leading up to now, that President Trump is reasserting the bold leadership that the United States of America has really needed to have on the world stage. And he is bringing us back in a very strong way. And I'm very, very hopeful. You see the work that's already happened. He had a peace deal that he simply was able to go and witness just the other day. He's now meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan. He's looking for more trade opportunities. I know some things to try to help our farmers here in the United States, even the soybean purchases of some other countries. So there are things like that that he is doing that I'm very, very excited about. And then, of course, much of this is leading up to the meeting that he's going to have with President Xi toward the end of the week. And the framework is already, it seems, to be put in place for that meeting. And I'm very, very grateful American leadership is back under this president. And I think the American people ought to be very excited.
Congressman, there are a number of industries that are rich in North Carolina. President Trump has often spoken and tweeted about the furniture industry and bringing that back to states like North Carolina. But I also, with President Trump having these conversations with China, it also brings about the conversation of bringing those pharmaceutical active ingredients, onshoring them back to the United States, which I think Raleigh, North Carolina has a huge industry when it comes to pharmaceutical R&D. That would really, really go a long way in boosting North Carolina, especially in those cities, wouldn't it?
No doubt about it. Research Triangle Park there in Raleigh is a big area that we see this kind of research being done and leading the way around the country. And so this will be a big boom to our entire community. And we're seeing all kinds of things that are a boom. We've seen Amazon that's bringing $10 billion to my district that we're very excited about. In fact, on Thursday, I'll be a part of a ceremonial groundbreaking that we'll be doing for that in Richmond County. So just some amazing things that are happening that this president is taking seriously the trade efforts and really just rebuilding our economy.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. So I know you've been very concerned about Mifepristone and not only that its widespread distribution, but the lack of medical monitoring, the side effects that moms do suffer from it that hardly ever gets talked about when you talk about Planned Parenthood or the media that covers it. Can you give us a sense of what is possible? What can be done to rein in this drug or to create some regulatory oversight in the next few months? Because I think a lot of women are growing concerned that maybe it's handed out way too easily and to the great danger of women who don't get follow-up from their doctors.
It is handed out way too easily. And I think that many of us that have been a part of the pro-life movement across this country for a long time have been very concerned that when folks can actually just go and to their mailbox and get a pill to terminate their pregnancy, that is extremely dangerous from the health care of the woman to obviously the termination of the child is something we're extremely concerned about. And we've seen legislation introduced, I've been a part of it, that would somehow limit and bring that to an end. I was disappointed recently when the FDA actually approved a generic form of this. and felt like it was out of step to everything that we have been promoting. And so we've sent a letter calling for that to be reined in, and for those that are responsible for moving this generic drug forward to be held accountable. So again, it's something very dangerous. It's something that we need to be aware of. We need to make sure that women are not in a position where they're going to find themselves in a medical emergency as a result of taking this very dangerous drug. Women bleeding out and other instances like that occurring. And it needs to be, when it is administered, it must be under a doctor's care. I think that is just a common sense regulation, and we've been pushing common sense in this Congress and this administration. And when you look at Mifepristone, this is something that we're allowing to happen without common sense regulations being in place.
Absolutely. Sir, another social issue involving children. I know that North Carolina, as a majority red state most of the time anyway, parental rights is a big issue. So you have statewide a lot of parents who are standing up for keeping the gender ideology out of schools. But you have a few certain districts, school boards, who are trying to push it in there. What do you do about those?
Well, I think President Trump is being very clear that he is not going to allow federal funds or any monies to get to those school districts and those states that are allowing boys and girls sports and all those kind of things. We need to hold them accountable. Of course, now we've got a Democrat governor in North Carolina and a Democrat-controlled state board of education that we've got to deal with, and those are issues that our state legislators are having to work through. But again, we've got to use common sense. We've got to make sure that in all areas of education that the parents' voices are being heard. And again, protecting young people in the midst of it. And again, I think that we're making strides in that direction. But again, we've got to make sure that these school boards are not funded with asking the taxpayers to continue to put money into something that is an 80-20 issue overwhelmingly.
Another issue that is so popular with the American public, the crackdown on violent crime, the FBI taking on transnational gangs and street gangs and spies and terrorists in record numbers. Your state had one of the most horrifying crimes of the last year. A young woman who fled Ukraine and the horrors of war, coming here for a new life, gets stabbed to death by a guy who was repeatedly released despite his dangerous and criminal behavior over and over again. Tell us where we are in that case and what is being done at the state, local, and federal level now to make sure we don't have more repeats like that.
Well, John, I wish I could give you a lot better news. I will say in a positive vein that our state legislature did pass Irina's law, named after Irina Zarutska, the young lady that you were referencing that had come from Ukraine and was murdered in cold blood right there on our light rail. But there's still so much work to be done because as we came and brought the House Judiciary Committee for a field hearing there in Charlotte, there were not only the story of Irina that brought us together, but we listened to an impassioned father that shared about his daughter there in South Carolina, Logan Federica, who was killed in cold blood in just a robbery there in the University of South Carolina visiting friends. She lived in my district right there in Union County, North Carolina. So again, these were people that had been arrested, in our case, arrested 14 times in Irina's case, but there in Logan's case, where she was murdered, the guy had been arrested 39 times and 25 felonies, and yet was still out walking the streets. So there are movements that are being made to pass laws to somehow control these magistrates from being able to put people back out on the streets. But this is something that needs to change, again, at the federal, state, and local area. And judges have got to be held accountable, and we've got to continue to make strides in that direction. And that's, again, one of the things that we have pushed for is that we would actually pass a law that would bring transparency to the situation where if you're in a community that's going to have no cash bail, if it's going to be a community community where you're going to be defunding the police, that ought to be known to everybody in that city. It ought to be known to people that are considering vacationing to that part of the country so that they avoid going there. We need to be having ways of communicating that, and we're wanting to move legislation that can actually make that happen, as well as, again, cutting out funding. We can't say to these blue, soft on crime cities that the American taxpayers are going to be sending grants and everything else to those cities when you're continuing to do these kind of things, and we've got to be willing to step up. And then, of course, look at what President Trump's been able to do where he has sent in the National Guard. There in Memphis, right here in Washington, D.C., where I am tonight. We have seen amazing strides that have been made when they got the support. And in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Fraternal Order of Police have asked the governor to bring in the National Guard there to be able to step in Charlotte and make a difference and bring support where our police are understaffed by the numbers that they shared.
Remarkable stuff. It'll be an amazing day when you can go to any community and find out what violent felons the district attorney or judge let out without bail. That will be a big win for the American people. Congressman, great to have you in the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Always great to be with you guys. Y'all have a great day, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, sir. Great to have you on. All right, folks, when we come back, one of the top law enforcement officers in the Justice Department, she oversees election integrity. Harmeet Dillon next, right after these messages. Hey, America, the FBI has been warning about a type of real estate fraud on the rise called home title theft, and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on a single document, use a fake notary stamp, then file it with the county, and just like that, boom, they're on record as owning your home. Using your ownership, they then take out loans against your equity or even sell your property, and you're not going to know about it until you get a foreclosure or collection notice in the mail, and that's not going to be a good moment. That's why I partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can protect your equity and find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com. You'll get a free title history report and a free trial. Their $1 million triple lock protection. That's a great deal. $1 million to protect your home. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title records, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud occurs, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix it. Find out why I trust Home Title Lock. Protect yourself like I did. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. Go to HometitleLock.com and use that promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN.